All right, I got 5:30 on July 12th, 2022, and time to commence with the C.I.C. Community Improvement Corporation meeting, the quarterly meeting. First, we'll start with a roll call. Mr. Miller?
Mr. Wallert?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mrs. Ulrich?
Here.
Mr. McElravy?
Here.
And I am here. Mr. Springsteen is excused from our meeting, and Mr. Moravec is as well.
All right, you have in front of you and provided via email. Actually, first, before I do that, I want to amend the agenda to add a 3B under new business for just time allowing public comment.
Okay, you're right.
I motion that we would amend the agenda to put in item 3C.
I guess, well, yeah, 3C, I guess.
3C for public comment.
And I'll second that.
Any
discussion?
Not from me.
All right, we'll call the vote.
All right. Mr. Wallert?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mrs. Ulrich?
Yes.
All right,
Mr. McElravy?
Yes.
And I vote yea.
That passes 5-0. We will add 3C public comment. So you have in front of you and have been provided via email the minutes from the last meeting of May 10th, 2022. Are there any motions?
I motion that we approve the minutes from the May 10th, 2022 C.I.C. meeting.
I second.
All right, any discussion?
No.
None.
All right. Seeing none, we'll call the question on that.
All right. All in favor of approving the minutes? Mr. Wallert?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mrs. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. McElravy?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. We move on to new business financial statements Q2 2022. Mr. McElravy.
Yes, Mr. Waller, thank you. So there were 3 receipts in the quarter and also 3 expenditures. As the board will recall, the Board of Trustees transferred 2 properties from Township ownership to the C.I.C., and the C.I.C. has found buyers for those properties, returning them to productive use. And the receipts that you see there are the 2 earnest money receipts, and then also one of the property sales. That's for 2684 Winning. The sale for the second property actually settled at the bank in July, so that will show up on the third quarter statements. From an expenditure standpoint, there were 3 in the quarter, 2 to complete the financial statements for the 2021 year, and then the second were for supplies to sell those 2 properties, which leaves the C.I.C. with a closing balance at the end of the quarter just shy of $72,000.
Okay, are there any motions at this time?
I motion that we accept the financial statements from the second quarter of 2022.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion?
Thank you for putting that together.
My pleasure.
Thank you. We'll call the question, and the discussion would probably be more along the lines of item B anyway, so we'll call the vote on that.
Okay. For the approval of the financial statements for second quarter 2022, Mr. Wallert?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. McElravy?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. The financial statements from Q2 2022. Item B, the discussion of disposition of C.I.C. assets. Mr. Miller, you'd like to take that away, please?
Yes. At the previous meeting, the board approved 2 offers for our 2 vacant lots and had a couple of stipulations with a 20% earnest money and closing by June the 30th. And I'm pleased to announce that those 2 sales of C.I.C.-owned properties have been completed. And we're happy to be able to work with Shelley Bolden on the Planet Drive property and then Kendra Bloom on the Winning. And so I just developed, I think, a good rapport with them and just advise we're happy to work with them any way we can to speed that development along, and happy to have a new home in those lots very soon.
Exciting.
No, originally, because I just responded to somebody with this, there was an LLC that won that bid. Is that correct? The second bid, the one on Planet?
Shelley Bolden does operate a Bolden Builders LLC.
Yes, okay,
So,
all right.
yes.
Just making sure. I couldn't remember what the LLC was called. but-
She's the one that wants to live across the street from not your mom or mine, but hers.
Okay, and the other individual that won is, grew up in the neighborhood, or?
Planet, she would, yeah,
No, that's Bolden
Okay.
on Planet.
yeah.
Kendra Bloom is I think a small, growing developer.
Okay,
I think, again, had good meeting with her and her father. And so they are looking, I think one thing that I was able to see through this, early process for the C.I.C. is the number of small independent developers who are interested in scattered infill, where they find lots and they want to build on those. So they're not the MI Homes of Dunlap, but there are a number of them out there, and we were able to post a picture of the
Rendering.
it was just the closing day with Shelley, and just congratulating her that she's going to be able to live across the street from her mother, and we had just interest calls just off of the picture. So I think that those opportunities are going to be out there all the more. I think the strategy would just be for us to try to work with partners in the region, such as the Port Authority, to help those small independent developers find those lots that they would like to purchase and get a new home on.
And as a board, I have no interest in owning little scattered parcels. I'd rather get them back onto the tax base and into development.
all right, any other comments, questions? So this is just a discussion, there is no action needed by the board.
That is correct.
All right, seeing none, we'll go to 3C, public comment. Good evening.
I just have a question. Some properties, there was Schuster Court and Springdale, and those were not transferred to the C.I.C., I don't think. Anyway, what is a factor in deciding if the C.I.C. is going to take on a vacant property, or like these last two, that were those under the C.I.C.? Because I thought the trustees sold those.
No, Schuster and Springdale were not, if I'm.
No, I mean, Wenning, was that,
Wanting was,
it was under C.I.C.? Okay, so what's a deciding factor as to?
So one of the motivations that I have in wanting, and I wanted it on the C.I.C., is it would mean that we wouldn't need to take the best or the highest bid. The C.I.C. has flexibility on what bid it can take if we want something to be used for somebody to move in across from their mom or something like that. And I think that's.
And the one on Schuster Court went through the Hamilton County Port Authority.
Yeah,
And
so I mean, so why did that one, I mean, we demolished it.
I'd have to recall where we got the demolition funds for that. I think we got a grant
I
from.
think it was from the Community Development Block Grant, maybe.
I'd have to look into that. I don't know.
But, so that one we didn't put through the C.I.C. and then gave it to the Port Authority. And so what's the difference of doing that and a house that or a property we put to the C.I.C. and then sell it?
I think there was an immediate interest from the neighbor there on Schuster Court, and he was actively pursuing it from, it fell into the hands of the Port Authority before it ever got to us. And he was, my recollection is that he was actively pursuing it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I can't speak of Schuster and Springdale. I think were about a year before I got
yeah,
here.
I wasn't here. Yes, I
I'm,
don't know.
I'm thinking of the one on Springdale. Where was that?
Just right up the street here, if you're going that way,
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else?
There is no further business, Mr. President.
All right. Any motions?
I motion that we adjourn the Community Improvement Corporation meeting at 5:40 p.m.
I second.
Any discussion?
None.
All right. Mr. Miller?
And motion for adjournment, Mr. Wallert,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mrs. Ulrich, and Mr. McElravy.
Yes.
And I vote yea.
We're adjourned at 5:40 p.m. See everybody at 6. All right, we're going to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees to order. It is 6 o'clock on July 12th, 2022. Our fiscal officer is not in today, so we need to select someone to do the minutes. Does anybody have a motion? I guess we can't motion.
With motion, I think we need to.
We need to do attendance first. So, Mr. Mills, why don't you do attendance and then we'll motion? Is
Sounds
that
good.
all right?
Trustee Unger.
Here?
Trustee Waller.
Here.
Trustee Lord.
Here.
All right. Is there a motion now to appoint someone to act as minutes?
I motion that we would appoint Jeff Weckbach to be secretary for this meeting and take minutes.
I will second that. Mr. Weckbach, are you willing to rise to the occasion? All right. So I will call the vote. Is there any discussion, Mrs.
No,
Orr?
I'm just looking at his smile.
Any?
He will do a fine job.
All right. Any discussion?
None.
None.
All right. I will call the vote since we haven't actually officially voted. Mr. Unger?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
That passes 3-0. Mr. Weckbach, you have been promoted to our fiscal officer tonight. Okay, Mr. Mills, anything for us?
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with the Higher Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees, including potential promotion. Also, in accordance with the Higher Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Also, in accordance with the Higher Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. Also, in accordance with the Higher Revised Code, Section 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation.
I motion that we go into executive session for the reasons detailed by Administrator Mills.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
None.
All right, hearing none, we'll call the question.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. Will there be anybody additional called into?
Mr. Solomon and Mr. Weckbach.
Okay, we are off to executive session at 6:02 p.m. Please stay tuned. We have 7 o'clock.
Sorry, police business.
All right, so we are back in session at 7 p.m. Mr. Mills, is there anything to, I'm sorry, let's do a roll call attendance, please.
Sure. Mr. Waller?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes, here.
All right, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
All right, we will now go to the opening of the meeting here with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we just take a moment of silence, and if we can, for all those intentions in our hearts, but especially for last week, many of you heard there was a tragedy, a junior at LaSalle High School. Cam Kolhoff passed away in a car accident in, I think, Fairfield Township. If we keep him in our hearts, his family in our hearts tonight, through that moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. When we started at 6 o'clock, the first thing we did, Mr. Baker, who's not with us tonight, whose mother has passed away. Mr. Weckbach was voted and motioned and voted to be our fiscal officer to take the minutes today. So that's why we have a change in the roster for this evening. All right, so you have been provided a minutes via email.
I didn't,
What's that?
I didn't see him.
That's right, well, those are C.I.C. minutes, so we will skip over minutes. We're waiting on Mr. Baker for that. Presentations, public hearing on 2023 tentative tax budget.
Yes, sir. To give the staff report on this and kick things off, Mr. Jeff McElravy, our finance director.
Mr. McElravy, it's odd seeing you this early in the meeting.
It is rare.
Yeah.
Good evening, Board, once again.
Good evening.
So it is, once again, budget season. And the first step in that process is for the Board to approve the 2023 tax budget. This is something that is required by state law. My take on this is that it's an exercise to help local governments make sure that they don't have significant shortfalls in their anticipated revenues versus their planned expenditures. That is certainly not the case for Colerain Township. The spreadsheet showing the tentative tax budget for 2023 is on page 121 in your packet, and this will be an item for action later on the agenda. But the short version of the tentative tax budget is that we are looking at, bear with me here one moment, just shy of $75 million in estimated receipts, with $44 million in projected expenditures, which should leave a fund balance of just over $31 million. The methodology for this is going to cause some confusion. What is required is to use the fund balance from January 1 of the calendar year along with the estimated receipts from 2023. So a lot of that fund balance has been spent. And in addition to that, there have been a lot of ins and outs over the course of the first 6.5 months of the year. So what you will see when we actually get into budget season are numbers that are different from this. It's just the way that the process is set up. So with that, the staff recommendation is a motion to approve the 2023 tax budget later on in the agenda. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, actually, we'll save questions for when they consider the agenda item, but my recommendation now would be that the board move to open a public hearing.
I motion that we open a public hearing on the 2023 tentative tax budget.
I'll second that. Mr. Weckbeck, or any discussion?
No.
Mr. Weckbeck?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0, so we have a public hearing. Is there anyone here today that wants to testify in the public hearing with regard to the 2023 tentative tax budget? All right, seeing none, we do not need to swear anyone in.
I motion that we would close the public hearing on the 2023 tentative tax budget.
And I'll second that. Discussion?
None.
So as Mr. McElravy said, a lot of these are just placeholders that change. We just need to have this. This is a work in progress. This is a report that we need to have to the auditor. All right, Mr. Weckbeck.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. That public hearing is closed. 6B, presentation by McGowan Brabender on self-insurance update.
Yes, hello. We are going to be receiving a presentation by McGowan Brabender on our self-insurance program. It's, I'll remind the board and those in attendance and those watching at home, the township used to use a fully insured model to provide health insurance to our employees, and we have recently transitioned to self-insurance. And I'm not going to step on your line, so you take it from here.
Good evening. My name is Diane McCracken. How am I going to advance the slides? Oh, I'll just let you know. Okay, so we're going to talk about how we're running on the self-funded year to date from when we made the change to self-funding starting in August. We're going to look at a funding comparison, then the medical renewal that we decided for 8/1/2022, and then strategy and next steps. So plan results. I want to start off and say thank you for your partnership, first of all, and we made the decision after meeting last year to go self-funded because we were running really well, and it has paid off in saving the township a lot of money. And we'll go into some of the, I'm not going to go into every detail of every number, but as you can see, right now, you have paid, you are $415,311 above budget. So what we've set for budget and what you're paying out in claims and administrative costs, we are that much ahead of the game right now. So we help you set your budget based on claims, and we have a whole analytic team who looks at claims and what costs are going to be. And we look at that every month. I send the reporting out every month to the executive team here, and we're running really well. So that's what that slide is. We're running at, Jeff, can you move that over a little bit? 73, just to the right a little bit, 73% to budget right now. And we have 2 months left to get a whole year, but we don't get reporting up to date, so reporting runs a little bit behind. So through that reporting is through May. We're running 74% of budget. So we're looking great there. If you would go to the next slide. Go ahead. So we do a funding comparison, and what this is if you look in column A, if you had stayed fully insured with Anthem and we had accepted the renewal, which was a 17% decrease, and we kept paying that fully insured premium, we would be at the 168. But if you go all the way over to the right, what we do with this analysis is we look at if you were staying fully insured and you paid that premium, and then we look at what we did versus your claims that we pay, your pharmacy claims, and then your fixed costs that are to rent the network and things like that. You can see on the right-hand corner, down on the right-hand side, you are $525,070 above where you would be if we had stayed self-funded, or I'm sorry, fully insured. So moving self-funded, we're that much ahead of the game. Right, if we had taken that decrease, right. So, I'm sorry, can you go back one more space? And then when we decided to move self-funded, every dollar that we were paying, and I say we because I feel like I'm a partner with Colerain Township, so every dollar that was paid to Anthem, they were paying out 39 cents. So that's why we looked at self-funded and decided that it was the right move to make, and it has shown that it is the right move to make.
And you can say we anytime you bring us 500,000. We'll get you a chair in an office if you want. I mean,
I would like that with a window. This just, without going into great detail, we share this with the I call it the executive team, once again, to help us set our budget. So again, I have a data analytic team behind me who helps me come up with all the numbers. So basically this is saying that for the budget going forward, we're right where we should be. So we don't have to increase premiums to employees, and we actually end up running a little bit better because we're a little bit conservative with our projection. And then this was just a slide. I just wanted to say again, great first year of being self-funded. You know, in healthcare, I don't get to deliver a whole lot of good messages with rising healthcare costs, but going self-funded is a way to control your costs. So I'm so happy that we were able to do it, and it's working out so well because that is the right step to be able to control costs for us. The other thing I wanted to touch on is we always look at benchmarking. So we look at the State Employment Relations Board benchmarking to make sure that the plans that we're offering are comparable to what the benchmarking is for other townships. And as you can see, the deductible is a little bit less for both plans. Out-of-pocket maximums are comparable on the gold plan. The platinum plan is a platinum plan. It is definitely richer than what benchmarking is. So we use this tool when we're looking at attracting new hires and retaining employees. So we feel like we're really well aligned, if not a little bit richer in some places on the benchmarking. And we look at that every year. The last thing I wanted to touch on is when we got you as a client, we pretty much right away started going right into the, oh my gosh, it's renewal season, because even though you're an 8-1 renewal, you pretty much start that many, many months prior. So after we got through the renewal and moved self-funded, then we had what's called a core belief session. And what that does is that just aligns all the decision makers to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. And typically townships and cities are very well aligned with their leadership. In the private sector, you might see the HR person wants to go here, and the CFO is saying, no, we're going here, and the CEO is saying, no, we're going here. So it's a nice exercise to go through, though, to make sure that we're aligned. And because we went self-funded, it's really important to make sure that we're talking about wellness, to make sure that everyone is staying healthy, because we are paying claims now on our own. So we did that exercise, and then we kind of put together a 3-year plan. So we're always looking forward on what we're doing. And just touching on a couple things, if you're on the plan here, we have started using something called Accelerate Go as a way to reach out to employees to update them on different things. For instance, we sent out something on the employee assistance program and some wellness initiatives. So that's all coming out every month. And we're always looking at a near-site clinic to see if that fits and when that fits and what other townships are doing to, again, to be competitive. We formed a wellness committee because wellness is so important as we're self-funded. And you can see it's a 3-year plan. So as we renewed 8/1/2022, we're already kind of looking ahead to 2023. What is that going to look like? So in the first year, we renewed with Anthem. But then next year, do we look at going to a different TPA? Do we look at carving out different pieces of the self-funded, which you can start to do after you've been self-funded for a few years? So just wanting to let you know that in addition to the good news of being able to save money and knowing that the self-funded is a long-term strategy, we're always looking ahead and trying to bring the best options to you to save money and get employees and retain employees.
Nice job.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
So how is your firm paid? Based on our savings, or is it a flat fee, or how are we compensating your company?
We get compensated by the carrier.
By Anthem.
Right.
And it's a year into it, and I just assume bank everything we're saving, but at some point, what would this do to employee premiums?
What would being self-funded do to employee
Right.
premiums? Well, we always look at that to see, we were able to hold them steady this year because claims are so good. I mean, you only have one large claimant, so I mean, it's up to you what you want to do to.
And we significantly reduced premiums last year. Between last year
Okay.
and this
Yeah, I
year.
just wanted to have that as part of the discussion.
And not just premiums, that's what the employee pays, but it also reduces, that's 20%. We pay the 80%.
Right, yeah, that's what I meant, just the employee side of it.
Yeah, so both the employee and the employer was reduced by 18% last year to this year, and we're able, in an environment that is where costs are going up, we're able to hold steady again for another year.
Right, so through your bringing this program in, it helps our employees a little bit with their take-home.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that might be something unrealized, or they don't realize that.
Well, they do.
That
Yes.
your paycheck's a little bit bigger just because of some moves we made at the administrative level.
Yes.
Right, we also brought a little bit of savings on the employer-paid life, a small reduction in that cost to the township, and moving the dental plan. We saw some savings. We're not talking the same big dollars that you do in
Right.
medical, but still some savings there as well, so.
I know we tend to benchmark what we pay our employees versus other
Right.
townships and villages and cities or whatever, and I'm just wondering if, rather than just that salary figure of, hey, if you look at our benefits, they cost you less to be enrolled in and different things like that, so
And we
I'm
try to
glad
give
we're
that
able to
message
pass a little
during-
bit of that along
Yeah.
to our employees,
Yes.
so.
And, yeah, it's, you know, as much as we think we're always communicating all the good messages, it's like, we're not always sure what they hear, but,
Well, and it's, you know, people compare us to other places, and if we were a city, those employees would go, well, I'm getting paid a little more, but yeah, you're losing the first 2% in a city income tax, and that's another benefit of working for the township is we don't have an income tax. We're working hard to get your employee benefit costs down and, you know, different things like that.
right,
So,
yes.
not for you because you live in the city, so you don't realize that, but us folks in the township do, so. That's fine, thank you.
Any additional comments, questions?
Nice job, thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you've done and saving us some money and coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Now we have a presentation, again, this time by Urban Fast Forward.
Yes, so I'd like to invite Casey Terry and Kathleen Norris to the podium to give an overview of a project that is wrapping up and will be before you this evening, that has gone on for, 18 months or so, that is very similar to the work that we've done in Northbrook with charting a path forward in Northbrook. Northbrook created the Northbrook Now Strategic Reinvestment Plan, and modeling on that, we have now Growing a Greater Grospec, the Strategic Action Plan for Grospec. Ms. Terry?
Oh, thank you, Jeff. My name is Casey Terry. My colleague Kathleen Norris is here with me as well, and we're with Urban Fast Forward, as Jeff just said. You can go to the next one. We began working in Grospec. I think we started our first engagement sessions in maybe October of last year. And so from then to spring, we had 4 engagement sessions. 2 of them were with a Greater Grospec, which is the community group in Grospec. We had 1 session with institutions, including those listed there, and another session with local businesses. If you can go to the next one. During these sessions, one of our focuses was determining assets and challenges of the community. And the top assets that came out across all of the sessions was the diversity in Grospec, which was kind of a surprise to us. We didn't know there was so much diversity in Grospec, particularly in its businesses. Other assets were location and the sense of community. Top challenges that were mentioned were a negative perception of the community, the need for safe spaces for youth and litter, particularly along Colerain Avenue. Other comments that we got were just about the idea that the residential neighborhoods of Grospec are really green and thriving, and it's kind of a contrast to the asphalt that's along Colerain Avenue that most people that are passing through see in Grospec. And so people really wanted to be able to let people know that Grospec is actually really pretty, and there's a lot happening within those residential neighborhoods. Next one. So we have a lot of recommendations in this report. We'll just go through a few of them tonight. We've kind of broken them down into 3 buckets, the first of which is design and placemaking. So Grospec is filled with businesses along Colerain Avenue, but there's nothing that's really meant just for the residents of Grospec. So one of our top recommendations is to create a town square where the residents of Grospec feel like it's somewhere where they can come and they can have events and get to know one another, have a gathering space. Parallel to that, building on the diversity of the businesses in Grospec, we are proposing the creation of an international village where all of these different restaurants and small grocery stores can be brought together in one place and get people to come patronize those businesses, and it can be a momentum driver to bring people from outside the area into Grospec as well. And if those two could be combined into some kind of gathering space with the village attached, it could really be a momentum driver for Grospec. So in the plan, we've laid out a few different potential locations for it, one of which we show here on Clara Avenue. The other recommendation I'll highlight here is about neighborhood traffic. People in our stakeholder sessions talked about how there's a lot of speeding on neighborhood streets and main corridors as well. And we also realize that there's a lot of pedestrians in Groesbeck, which you might not expect, both out of necessity and out of choice. So the plan outlines some traffic calming measures that we can use to slow down the traffic and make pedestrians feel a little safer and be able to walk between their houses and these great institutions that are in Groesbeck. So our next bucket of recommendations is about programming and activation. So we can build these welcoming and safe spaces and connections for the residents, but we also need to program them in order to make a truly great place. So we're recommending that Groesbeck hosts community events that celebrate some of the assets of Groesbeck. So that could be events like an international food event. We have an example here in Norwood. They do a welcome dinner where they get international residents to cook a meal and get to know their neighbors. There's also great garden centers in and around Groesbeck, so there could be a plant swap or some other garden-centered events. And there's also a lot of great institutions in Groesbeck. So one of the most interesting things that came out of our engagement sessions was that the institutions, especially the library and the YMCA, are some of the most highly used YMCAs and libraries in the entire county. So that's a great asset for Groesbeck and something that they can build on when hosting events and having partners to program events and other programs. You can go to the next one. The last bucket here is policy and finance. So I'll focus on the zoning recommendation here. We say community zoning should reflect values. So what that means is it should be reflected, it should reflect trends in the market. So we know COVID has shifted things and there's been an acceleration of decline of Class C and D shopping centers, which applies to Groesbeck. And so updated zoning should be in place to prepare these commercial areas for redevelopment and make sure they're reflecting what the community wants to see for the future of Groesbeck, which is a greener, more walkable future. The other one I'll mention on here is keeping corridors and gateways clean. So because Groesbeck has these great groups, including a Greater Groesbeck, the Chamber, there's a lot of partners that can come together to help maintain the visual appearance of Groesbeck, or of Colerain Avenue, and pay special attention to the community's edge and those gateways coming into the community. So this could be an enforcement or a focus on code enforcement, or a partnership that provides incentives like a facade improvement grant to kind of balance the carrot and the stick approach. But the idea is that keeping these corridors and gateways clean will really differentiate Groesbeck from the other communities along Colerain Avenue and show that people are really proud to work here and live here. Those are the recommendations I was going to go over. I just wanted to say we've really enjoyed working in Groesbeck. Kathleen was instrumental in the Northbrook plan that we did here. I was not yet with the company, but I've loved working here. I actually spent part of my childhood growing up in this area, so it was really cool to come back and see it and get to spend some time here with everybody. So,
as did I, but many, many years ago.
So we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I did read through it, and a couple of things I noted. It seems like Galbraith Road between Cheviot and Colerain, there was a plan to sort of channel the lanes and then put in some sidewalks. And what this is, for those watching, this is just some recommendations of stuff that could be way down the road for us. There's just so much traffic on that stretch of Galbraith. I have to think a little bit more about how something like that would work. I agree with the part there should be a more central place that would draw people, because right now it's pretty much set up as a get there by car place. And you know where St. Anne's Church is, there's a nice Hamilton County, a newer public library there. Talking about a community event, they had a festival Memorial Day weekend for the whole time I was growing up until about 10 years ago when things just started getting a little out of hand there, and they had to switch to a different event than the the annual festival they had, but I can see that that kind of left a void in the community when that left, because that church was a great draw for that part of the community, and that festival was a great draw also. You know, at some point, sooner than later, we're going to be building a new firehouse down there, and maybe one of the considerations would be, how would that be a draw? I know when the decision was made to put this building in this spot 30 years ago, it was put in a residential area. In a lot of other communities, the government building is sort of the center of the community and a natural draw, but we're just out here along Springdale Road, so that decision, I mean, there must have been a different viewpoint of it in the 90s when this building was located here. But I did read through it, and I found it very interesting, and there's some things in there we could implement and some things that are probably years away, but it's great to have a plan, because when you have a plan, you can plug in things as the money becomes available and try to implement it in bits and pieces, and so I appreciate your work. I did read through it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the fire station too. We actually talked with Jeff a bit about that and included that in the town square section because, yeah, to get all of those assets together that could be community draws would be great. So.
Right, and there's a lot of moving parts with that, so we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan, are you finished? Okay. Yeah, I agree. You know, it was interesting. I was intrigued by the international market. I don't, my memory is fuzzy, but I think they had one in Tri-County, maybe when I was growing up. Would that be right? An international market?
123 Merchant Street. They used to have customers there a long time ago, so I remember that.
But I do plan on, you cited as your example Indianapolis, and so I guess I'm going to Indy within the next couple of weeks and look. Theirs is much larger, as you indicated, but I think it's. I've said many times up on the dais up here that I think people aren't looking for places to go anymore. They're looking for experiences, and I think that's captured very very uniquely in this report, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
To extrapolate on where you had that on Claire, I was at the Harrison Street Fest, and we're thinking, where could we do a street fest in Colerain? Never thought about that little street fest right there in Claire. You could block the street up. You can have access to several parking areas, and people can walk. I think that would be a terrific draw for Claire right there, because it was really well received in Harrison. They had 2 bands and all the different restaurants that opened, and they were all different kinds of restaurants, and it was very well received. So I think that would be a wonderful experience for people of all of Colerain Township, not just Groesbeck, and for people to cross maybe 75 to come over to Colerain to experience different foods. I love I love the whole idea.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, Claire Avenue, when you're standing on it, I mean, you don't even necessarily know that Colerain Avenue is there. It's kind of like a hidden little gem of the.
And so there's access on several ways to get back to it, and parking in different locations.
Park, yeah,
so yes, I think it'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Any other additional comments, questions?
Just have to see as time goes by what we can implement out of the plan.
All right.
It's good to have a plan.
Thank you so much for your hard work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us in Colerain Township.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a presentation now about the recognition of the stained glass. So if you look around here and in the police station, we have stained glass that was made years ago by Mr. Sandoz. Do we have a...
Sorry, there on the as you enter the room, there's a plaque above that says it says that was donated by Mr. Sandoz. Yeah.
And Mrs. Sandoz is here this evening and shared, and I'll pass these along to some other projects which are just incredible. I mean, I have not an artistic bone in my body, so I'm very impressed by this. But we'd like to recognize Mrs. Sandoz for the work that her husband did, and she'd like to say a few words as well. Thank you so much for coming out.
Well, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging one of Ralph's many accomplishments. And I'd also like to let you know a little bit about his active life. When in 1941, he enlisted in the United States Coast Guard, and part of his later, what was later commissioned into the OSS, if you remember that, by the Colonel Donovan. I've got a book on all of his, of his work.
Which is the predecessor to the CIA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from 1946 until 1984, he became the head of the Ohio Bricklayers Union. So that was a big part of his life. And in 1950, Ralph bought 6 acres of property on Cheviot Road and built a barn for his horse. We moved out to Colerain Township in 1970 on Dunlap Road. And he became a trustee, like one of you fellas, in 1990 through 1993. And then he retired and decided to do stained glass. And that's when he turned our horse barn into his glass shack. So he made a freestanding fire hydrant lamp with the fireman's hat and gave it to, at that time, Chief Bruce Smith. It's been quite a while ago. And then it was turned over to Chief Frank Cook. I don't know who's fire chief right now, or
Chief Wall.
so, anyway, also he made a lighted Colerain police badge that used to be in the vestibule of the police waiting room here, but I understand now it's down at the township, downtown in the mall. He also, and of course, you have the glass here, which I didn't see you told me that you were waiting to put a tag or
Yeah, there's a tag on the other side.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And let me see. And there's down at the Vinoclet Winery, which we used to hang out in, there's a few of his stained glass creations there too. So Ralph was also a 50-year member of the NRA, and my favorite, the Colerain Historical Society. So in 2012, he died from an automobile accident and donated his body to the Cincinnati Medical College. And I guess my daughter became an OBGYN doctor at the UC's College of Medicine in 1979. So he's always thinking of looking ahead. So I know he'd appreciate you're acknowledging him. So, and thank you for sharing some of my thoughts of Ralph.
Thank you so much for coming in this evening, and just beautiful workmanship. I mean, it's incredible. It's and the pictures are just amazing.
See if we can get Jeff to
Yeah,
scan
thanks
a
for
couple.
sharing them. They're beautiful. He really was talented. Yes.
A whole bin full
Oh, I
of
bet
them.
you do.
Wow.
It's
Betty
a
and
lot of hard work.
And I knew Ralph, and he was a pretty good fella, and he was always very kind to me. And I know there's a couple people in the room that knew him and maybe worked with him at the time. And gee, I can't believe that's been 10 years already. So
Well, thank you so
you're
much.
you seem to be doing pretty well. I see you out and about and moving around, and that's good.
Well, I keep my feet above the grass.
That's where we all hope to be. So yeah, I'll pass these along to Jeff, and maybe he can scan a couple of them and get them onto our website.
Nice idea.
Happy to do it.
So thank you very much.
That concludes our presentations this evening.
All right. We have a number of citizen address comments. I don't know if you want to get the, pull up the stop clock. And I don't see Miss Wright. Is she here? I'll put her to the back here, and if she comes, she comes. Ms. Moore. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Good evening. I had a couple of questions at the last meeting. Mr. Waller was kind enough to send me an email with some of the answers. But at the last meeting, the administrator announced that Duke had agreed to sponsor our fireworks display, and I'd like to know how much they contributed towards that. The township approved $9,000 to go to the Summer Events Committee, so I'd like to know how much of that Duke provided. I questioned if any of the new developments, Pippin, Kemper, Springdale, any of them, had had traffic studies. The administrator said Hamilton County performs them, not the township. So, my question again is, have any of the traffic studies been done for any of these new developments? When I come to a public meeting with questions, I expect answers. We address the board. If the board doesn't know, please have the administrator answer. We know he has all the information at his fingertips on his phone. I've stated that financial records had not been posted in the past, and Mr. Mills goes on his phones and makes them appear, acting as if they were always there. It's unfortunate that I get more information at the Colerain Historical Society meeting than coming to a public meeting. Regarding the contract with the Right Stuff, it will allow electronic timekeeping. Does that system feed into the UAN payroll system, or does it have to be entered manually? Exhibit A states, license has the right to access the precinct manager from all supported devices. And I'd like to know what a precinct manager is. And then it also says that there's no cost available until the completion of the initial term. So we don't know how much it's going to cost. Just for clarification again, regarding the sick bank, if an employee does not take FMLA, it means that they don't have to use any of their accumulated leave balances. They can just go to the sick bank. That's my question. If they don't take FMLA, can they just go to the sick bank? Is Mr. Barbier still our law director? He hasn't been around for over a year, and yet his name still appears on much of the paperwork. Nothing has been clear about where the new firehouses will be located. You've approved an architect. There has been a rumor for years that Rumpke would build a firehouse on their property. It appears the township owns property on Generation Drive by the Rumpke property. The township took ownership of this property in 2019 and 2020, and the property is currently being excavated. How did we get this property? I apologize if I'm mistaken, but I've not heard this in a public meeting before. You approved a strategic facility plan, but what plans have you selected? There are multiple options. Which one are you using? We would like to know. And this is the first time that I've, well, second time, I heard that it could be, the gross spec station could be on the location where it currently is, with having to acquire additional property, or it could be on Clara Road, not Clara Drive, whatever. So can you let us know what your plans are for these firehouses? And then I have a question as far as greater gross spec. If approved, Is this the goal of the board to accomplish what is in this report? It is stated that there have been numerous meetings with the stakeholders. Are these meetings open to anyone? Who are the stakeholders? Matt Teetsort made a comment that they were basically a Facebook group. We're interested in your intentions for the future of Colerain. So as far as, I'd like you to kind of explain how this growth spec plan affects the township. What responsibility does the township have to this plan? Or not really their responsibility, but what do they intend to do with the plan? Thank you.
Thank you. And we will respond to all these at the end here. Jennifer Kinsley. Thanks for coming out.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Kinsley. I'm a candidate for the 1st District Court of Appeals here in Hamilton County, and I wanted to come out tonight to say hello to all of you and introduce myself to the Colerain community. I have to be honest, I feel a little bit weird about taking the government's time for a political campaign, but I'm a first-time candidate. And I understand that this is a part of the process, and so here I am to be transparent and open and to let people know a little bit more about me. When I think about the Colerain community, I have really fond memories. I'm a mom of 5 kids, and 2 of my boys played football here for the Colerain Little Cards. They're gonna kill me for this, but I brought their cards.
How cute, yeah.
Really cute. I keep these in my wallet because I loved being here, watching them practice and play games, and I actually wound up working the sidelines a lot on the chain gang. I'm a football fan myself. And I got to see the Colerain community in action for those 5 years. Here's what I learned. People in Colerain look out for each other. They care about fairness, and they want to do what's right. And those are my values too. For most of my life, I've worked 2 jobs. I'm a constitutional law professor at Northern Kentucky University, where I teach my students to stand up for people's rights. And for 23 years, I've been a practicing attorney doing just that. I have represented clients on all sides of the political spectrum from all walks of life who cannot get a fair shake. And I have often represented my clients for free because I put my money where my mouth is. I'm a First Amendment advocate. I believe in open and transparent government. And I'm here to be open and transparent, to tell you more about me. I have practiced in every type of court that a case would be appealed to the Court of Appeals about. And I've handled close to 90 appeals in my career, including one against your attorney that he's gonna beat me on. I'll just tell you right now. You're lucky to have him. I'm somebody who's willing to go the extra mile, quite literally. I want to share with you that in 2016, I boarded a plane with very little notice for Yekaterinburg, Russia, to teach Russian lawyers how to strengthen the right of free speech in their country. And I was handpicked to do that because I have a successful track record of standing up for people whose free speech is on the line here at home. I saw things in Russia that really scared me, I'll be honest, and I'm probably never going to go back there, especially not now. But here's something that I learned. Democracy dies when we don't use our voices. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the race that I'm in. And sometimes this gets uncomfortable, and I don't mean it to be. I really don't. I'm running for an open seat on the Court of Appeals. My opponent is already on the Court of Appeals. His name is Judge Bob Winkler. I know he's a popular person, and I'm not here to tell you he's a bad guy, because he's not. If you like him, he's gonna be on the court, win or lose in this race. He's already there, and he's got a seat on this court until 2024. But if he wins, he's gonna change seats on the court and create a vacancy in the seat that he currently holds that one person, the governor of the state of Ohio, and not the voters, will fill. And that sounds pretty against democracy to me. I think the voters should choose. I think that's a fair process. And that's why I'm standing here. I think the trustees will tell you sometimes it's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to receive the scrutiny. It's hard to be criticized. And yes, it is hard to go all around town introducing yourself all of the time, right? But it's an important part of the process. And whoever wants to get this vacancy appointment, they're not doing what I'm doing. They're not standing here looking you in the eye, saying hello to all of you, putting up a website or telling you about their background, and you're not able to research who they are or talk to them or learn about them. That doesn't sound like America. That sounds like Russia to me. I've been there, I've seen it. So I do want to tell you how you can find out more about me. I have a website, jenniferkinsleyforjudge.com. I'm on all the social media platforms because my millennial campaign manager says that I have to be. So you can find me there. And you can also email me anytime at kinsleyforjudge@gmail.com, and I will personally respond to you. I think public officials should be accountable to the public, and I'm here to do that here tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your community with me. I've enjoyed what I've heard tonight. I appreciate being with you. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Betty Sandoz, do you want to speak again, or was that what you wanted to do before? I have you as a speaker list. Have you already? Sure, you're okay. Already spoke. Okay. And Ms. Wright is not with us, so that closes the citizens' address. So we have, we'll go on to administrative reports, but first we'll start with Ms. Moore's questions. The Duke sponsor, how much did they provide? I don't.
So they make that sponsorship to the Summer Events Committee, which is a nonprofit that puts on the fireworks, but I believe it was on the order of $1,000.
Okay. The traffic studies, whether they're done or not, is I think you pointed out before, is the county. It's done as part of the process before the final project is approved.
Yeah, it's important to note that I don't believe that they produce the study. They review the study and have the ability to review the traffic impacts of all of our development projects.
And isn't that done when it goes to the neighborhoods committee?
No, it's the Hamilton County engineer that does that.
Mm-hmm.
So his office is who we rely on as our township engineer to make sure that the traffic is appropriate for the development.
So if they've broken ground, the engineer is likely.
If they have a certificate of occupancy, if they have building permits, it's all part of the development process review.
All right. And as far as the computer program, I don't know the answer to this, but does it feed into the UAN system?
It'll have to, because that's the UAN is what we use to pay people. So whether it's us entering it or a direct connection, I have a feeling it's not going to be a direct connection, just because that's how UAN is. But there will that information will have to get to UAN in order to make payment.
So, and we've had this issue before with UAN not being compatible to other things, right?
Right.
So we would get likely a spreadsheet that we would have to re-enter. Is that?
So it's not clear to me right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the cost, you and I discussed some cost, I thought, because I asked for kind of a cost analysis on this.
Yeah, so let me take a look at do we have a page number?
I asked those same questions when I saw that, when I reviewed the agenda.
But because we have, right now, the way it works is he's looking for that, I'll kind of give you the background. We have different departments using different methods to enter in, and we have interestingly enough, no physical time clock.
The police uses one, the
Right.
fire uses a different one, and this will put them all in the same.
Right. And literally, like, for instance, fire chief on Sunday night sits down and does everybody's hours. And that can be I mean, I get that, that's part of the gig, but also I want my fire chief saving lives, not, not doing numbers.
And what this would do, was my understanding, was it would put all of our different employee categories, is that correct, Jeff? Put all of our different employee categories on the same sort of hour collection system.
Yeah, everybody would be using one system instead of what we're currently doing, which is using 3 or 4 different systems, including some that are paper, and that, because they're paper, are open to interpretation. At times, if somebody's 0 looks like a 9 or a 6 or whatever that is.
And we subscribe to a number of timekeeping things. This would integrate it into one. Plus, we have the factor of saving human capital as well.
Yeah. So we did a cost analysis and determined that, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it right now, but determined that with the addition of this software, the cost of it, less the software programs that we're going to be getting rid of that are being used by the fire department and the police department, less the time that is being saved across all of the organization in putting together payroll, this is a cost neutral and probably cost savings method. But we're not, or project, but we're not doing it necessarily because of its cost savings. We need to have uniform accountability throughout the organization for timekeeping, and it's just sort of a basic tenet of organizational management, is the ability to clock in, clock out, and we don't have that ability across our organization right now. So regardless of whether it saves us money or doesn't, which we believe that it will, we recommend approval of it. So,
Right, and when I discussed it with you Friday, my main concern was, does Rob, our IT person, what does he think of the program? And you told me you had discussed it with him, and he was fine with it, because I was more looking at some of the terms and conditions, so to say, of it. And you've had that discussion with Rob, and I consider him to be very top of his game in maintaining all of our IT, and he was comfortable with it also. Yeah. So that's the conversation I had with Jeff Mills about it.
So I think probably the nature of Ms. Moore's question is this seems like if there's not an amount, it's a blank check.
It's not a blank check.
Yeah.
In fact, contrary to what Ms. Moore said, I don't have access to everything in the whole organization on my phone. So if that's something that you'd like me to research and bring back to you, that cost analysis that we did,
yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I know that, because you and I did it over the phone, and I don't seem to have it. I'll probably find it after the meeting in my notes here, but yeah, we'll look at that cost analysis. As far as the fire stations, we haven't decided where they're going to be. We have a number of potential sites, but I think it would probably be inappropriate to talk about what those potential sites are, to signal to the owners, hey, Colerain Township's here, wanting a place for their fire station. So it hasn't been chosen, and we're working on it, and those negotiations, we're working on those negotiations. The property on Generations Drive was, I think Dan probably knows more about that. I know that was given to us by Rumpke, but we just have an option on it.
Yeah, so we do not own property on Generation Way. The land that's being moved is owned by a company called the Struble Road Development Corporation. We hope that they're getting it ready to support new business in the community, and we're working to make that a reality from our end. But we don't own property there. What we have is an agreement from when we first laid out the industrial park to have the option for selecting up to 3 acres of property there for the purpose of a new fire station. So that eliminates our land costs for Station 102 relocation, which is great.
And that option expires in
25?
25, I think. Is that right?
And I think, so, Mr. Waller, no, it's 27.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
So what I have here, I believe that the cost of the product is $25,000, less $4,300 for Schedule Anywhere, less $4,825 for a lad tech, less time that Chief Walls, BC's, Nancy, Tawana, and Cindy are all going to be working on getting payroll together. Getting payroll together is this production in our organization right now, and we need to do a better job of accountability and getting our payroll together efficiently, and that's what this will do. So I hope that helps answer your question. Great.
still on the question, so we talked about the fire stations. FMLA, if you don't use that, do you go straight to sick bank?
I don't quite understand the relationship there. There's not a relationship that I'm aware of. So FMLA is a federal law that protects your job while you're sick. I hope that that's a good description of FMLA. Protects your job while you're
It's
sick.
the 1993 Family Medical Leave Act.
Sure.
And that just means that you can take off for a death of a family member or illness in the family up to 12 weeks, and
There's a number, yeah.
there's a minimum number of employees. I think it's 60. If you're in a small business, it's not effective, but in an organization like ours, which has more than 60 employees, if one of our employees has a family crisis or a illness or death, they can take off up to 12 weeks unpaid.
And I think the spirit of the question might be, is do you go through your own, so FMLA is not paid unless you have the days to offset them, correct?
So if you want to get paid, you would have paid leave, and we've got different types of paid leave.
So do I have to use all my days on paid leave before the sick bank kicks in that people are going to?
Yeah, there's no, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And a sick bank, there's only been 3 maybe in, I don't know, 15 years.
Right, and we just did one about a month ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and I'll speak to these 2 questions, and Mr. Unger and Ms. Ulrich can speak to too in their reports. The greater gross spec is the goal of the board to implement the recommendations. What's our responsibility to the plan? Our responsibility, we can do nothing in the plan. We can do some of the things in the plan. We can do all the things in the plan. We can take some of the things in the plan and change them around a little bit to maybe fit what our financial status is on those issues. So, you know, I think Mr. Mills a lot of times calls it a game plan. There are a lot of things in there and a lot of things that I don't know. Right now, some of these things I'd be hard pressed to support. I think Dan mentioned about
Changing the lane width.
changing the lanes, and they mentioned about putting a bike lane in there. I mean, I would have to see an awful lot of evidence for something like that. But as I mentioned when the report was given, I'm intrigued by this international market and the Civic Square idea. Is it something we can pull off? And we certainly, you know, are moving to the direction of, you know, let's put a plan together for moving gross spec forward. So it's a wish list from the folks that they spoke to, I think would be the best.
You know, Matt, and over the course of the last 50 or 75 years, there's just been a lot of things that have popped up with no organizing mechanism, which is great in a free market economy for that, but this is just a plan, just like our KZF plan for Colerain Avenue. We've just in bits and pieces, we're implementing little pieces of that, and I don't expect that the whole gross spec plan would ever be implemented, but there's probably some things in there that we would use. It's good to have a plan or a.
So I love the idea about trees, and I'm going to push it, and I'm going to say, hey, other trustees, it's in the plan. And, you know, here's why it's a good idea. So
Argue about it. And
that's
see
right.
where we end up. So.
We did trees in Northbrook,
Right.
correct? So that was one of the things we did implement, and there was a couple other items that we talked about. It was a long strategic plan with Northbrook. What were some of the other things, if you can tell the public, that we did?
Sure. The mural that was just completed yesterday is part of that plan. The focus on Amarillo, which is a little dead end street that has lots of issues, including flooding and blight. The Port Authority is now investing in 1 or maybe 2 of those properties. We're looking at putting pollinator gardens in the floodplain there, and you know, the pollinator gardens throughout the community is another one. So there, and that really is it. So what we use these neighborhood-based strategic plans for is organizing the hopes and wishes of that community. And then over time, as the trustees say as the residents say this is a priority, as the trustees say this is a priority, we work that into our strategic plan and budget. So what we do is as we move into budget season, we look at all of our plans. You know, we look at the resources we have available, people and money, and we start plugging projects from our plans into our strategic plan and budget, and that's how we execute. To plan is human, to implement is divine. That's where it meets the road, you know?
all right, I think I think we've gotten,
Larry Barbier is still our.
oh, yeah, Larry Barbier, yeah.
Yes.
All right, and I think that gets the questions. We have now administrative reports.
Yes, sir.
What? Yeah, he's still our counsel.
Yes, okay.
The other administrative reports, Jeff.
Yes, great. Moving on to other administrative reports. Jeff, I didn't see the admin. Could you send that over? We'll start with Chief Walls in the fire department.
And Chief, if you'd introduce yourself to Mrs. Sandoz, that would be great.
Oh, here it is, Jeff. I'm sorry.
And
I've got it, Jeff. Thanks.
Well, the big one's in your office, isn't it? I think.
I don't have a stained glass one.
Okay.
I've got a personal one.
Okay.
But anyhow, good evening to the board,
Good evening.
administration, and those in attendance. First and foremost, I once again wanted to address the untimely death of Steve Hayden and the support that we saw from administration, the Board of Trustees, as well as the community. There was obviously an outpouring of support. We appreciate that immensely. And honestly, I can't stand here and thank everybody personally that I recall seeing along the way with the procession. But Debbie Hurst had a wonderful setup as we came into the township. I saw Trustee Wallard, I saw Lori McMullen, I saw all three trustees at the visitation, the administrator and assistant administrator, just countless people. And so from the bottom of our heart, we truly appreciate that. And I think Springfield Township and Colerain Township did a great job of honoring his service to both townships. So thank you. Real quick here, maybe I can provide a little bit of insight on fire stations. So in our strategic plan that we produced last year, there was a SWOT analysis that was conducted, and that was conducted by employees in the township, about 45. One of the weaknesses that they identified was aging facilities and equipment. One of the challenges that we had was aging infrastructure and the need for capital improvements. And so obviously then, from my standpoint, we're moving in that direction of doing things that have been identified by personnel in the fire department. We likewise had a strategic objective, that being our physical resources, with a goal of identifying the need to update, maintain, and improve existing facilities, which we're working towards, which is a huge part of that strategic plan. To one of the questions that was asked tonight as far as locations, honestly, maybe my beat face red gives it away. We were out today looking at locations, and to,
I would leave it at that.
Say, tonight that we know exactly where something is going wouldn't be prudent, because is it going to be a 10,000 square foot building? Is it going to be a 15,000 square foot building? Do we need 1 acre, 2 acres, or 3 acres? And so to definitively say tonight, we know exactly where something's going to go, honestly, it wouldn't be prudent, and we may be proven wrong as we continue down this path. As far as the Rumpke property, so something I want to touch on there is, it's not Rumpke's fire station. It'll be our fire station. But my predecessor and his predecessor have long since wanted to move Station 102 to the south, because about 80% of the runs in that district are there. So if we go back to 2009, I could produce a copy of a grant that I wrote as approved by the chief then and administration to, and it was a fire station construction grant as a part of the shovel-ready projects for the Obama administration coming out of a recession to move that fire station to the corner of 27 and Struble Road within a block of what we're thinking about right now. So I don't want anybody to think that this is something that we've just recently contrived or thought about. In all honesty, it's something that my predecessor and his predecessor have thought about and looked at. And in fact, in a recent conversation, quote unquote, I hope you can get the 102 move accomplished and glad to hear success may be at hand. And that was from the fire chief, who was the fire chief when I wrote the grant in 2009. So hopefully that answers a few things about where we were, where we're at, and where we're going as far as fire stations, and just trying to be transparent and straightforward and as honest as I could be. As far as my administrative report then, for the month of June, we made 783 EMS incidents. We had 216 fire incidents. We had 31 responses into the Springfield Township EMS contract area. We had no building fires, which is a good thing. We did, however, have a technical rescue incident that required the assistance from the City of Cincinnati, the Fairfield Fire Department, the Hamilton County Urban Search and Rescue Team, and the Milford Fire Department. If you look at resources available in the county, we don't need a confined space rescue team because we have a confined space rescue team, and it's called Hamilton County Urban Search and Rescue. Likewise, as a part of that complement, the Cincinnati Fire Department Heavy Rescue 9 responds with us, and that's the importance of that automatic aid and getting the resources that we need quickly and timely to hopefully effect a rescue. And the two that we didn't rescue, they rescued themselves because they lost contact and finally came walking out of the confined space with a shocked look on their face, like, why are you all here? And I think my comment was, because of you and because of you. And you can thank her for having the forethought to call 911 because she had lost contact with you. So she did the right thing. As far as our response times, well, let's go back to report of fire loss. No loss, no saves, but we do protect over $1 billion in property in the township. Our incident response time was 5 minutes and 21 seconds for the arrival of the first minute, and first unit on the scene less than 6 minutes was 68.09%. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say to you, at the funeral, with traditions being lost, the traditions of the changing of the guard, watching over the body, and the respectfulness and the dress blues, it was a beautiful presentation of respect for your community.
Well, thank you. And once again, you know, from the bottom of our heart, we appreciate everyone's support during the week at the funeral home, along the way to the cemetery, and even there. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. The next administrative report will be in the police department and will be delivered by Assistant Chief Ed Cordy.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, everybody. All right, police department for the month of June, we responded to 3,922 calls. That's still an increase. We're up about 8% from last year. We're averaging 130 calls per day. We're on pace to have, if it continues with this increase, of over 45,000 calls for service this year, which is a pretty big jump for us. We responded to all emergency calls in 2.88 minutes. So I always look at that and wonder what an 8/8 of a minute is. So that's 53 seconds, 2 minutes and 53 seconds. We conducted 165 traffic stops, which is a 27% increase from last month. We made 5 OVI arrests. We had 0 use of forces, 0 pursuits, 88 physical arrests. We had no internal investigations. Our code enforcement officers handled 342 inspections, 188 complaints, closed 275 violations, abated 20 properties, and referred 3 cases to housing court. I spoke last month about our impact unit. I know I emailed each one of you about this, but I'll reiterate everything here. Looking back, they spent 12 shifts with 2 or more impact members out, and in those 12 shifts, they had 26 traffic stops, 15 arrests, had 22 warrant arrests. They recovered 1 firearm. They seized 855 grams of marijuana, 6.9 grams of meth, 22 unit doses of fentanyl. They towed 14 vehicles, and they assisted the patrol officers with 46 calls for service. I have the code enforcement and the environmental crime stats that I'll hand out to you. There's, for the pure fact of data overload, I will just hand this to you and let you guys, feel free to let me know if you have any direct questions about this. So that's all I have for now. Any questions?
Keeping busy.
Yeah, I love numbers, so we'll
Hey,
get them to you.
Ed, I spoke to Jeff Mills immediately after the fireworks, which I think went off very well. And it was my understanding from you that that was our safest fireworks ever. Did we have 0 arrests and 0? We had 2 medical incidents that were handled on site we didn't have to take anybody off site. A couple kids got separated from their parents and they were reunited. And just the job and the coordination that goes into planning a big event like that, you know, with problems you can have at big community events, I was just very impressed. I know we talked at 11 o'clock that night, and I just think that went off marvelously. Do you have any comments about the security there and how it went?
We had a lot of officers on scene, which was great. We had multiple officers together in groups, which is also great because we had one incident right here at Springdale and Yolewood that could have gone terribly. In fact, Chief Walls was there as well, trying to help us out. There was probably upwards of 15 juveniles that were ready to engage into a fight, but due to the sheer number of officers we had on scene, we were able to very quickly stop the encounter, separate the encounter, and send everybody on their way. We've done this before in the past with 10 officers 15 years ago, and just the simple fact of having as many officers as we did, all it does is make our job easier and safer for everyone here.
Yeah, and I didn't hear about that, but it sounds like it was dispersed before it ever started.
In probably under 2 minutes, maybe less.
Oh, good.
Being my first year and being to witness the tacticalness that between the fire department and the police department, where everybody was in the screens and the cameras, it was such an undertaking that I don't think the public realizes what you guys do between the traffic closures, the bike police, who's watching the crowds, and all the issues that you have to think that are going to arise that you're looking for. It was a complete, I was just overwhelmed how many different departments, and you guys were all coordinating so beautifully together. And I think what we're saying, it showed very well that it was just so well done.
We appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a quick question. What's a unit dose of fentanyl?
So it's basically just one dose.
Okay.
That's just what it's preferred to be called as a unit dose.
And how many did you confiscate?
22.
22, I thought it was.
22 unit doses.
What's the street value of 22 doses?
Oh, goodness, I don't know.
I'm just just wondering.
So a unit dose of fentanyl is just it's enough for an overdose amount.
1 unit is enough. Okay.
And I'll just weigh in here on the fireworks situation. So this is the second year that we've had our emergency operations center set up and activated in our basement. It is what was the total cost of the EOC? Does anybody remember?
I believe it was under 10,000.
For under $10,000, we were able to bring in, we call it an EOC in a box. It collapses into a cage. It's able to be brought out for events and major issues. And it's superb to watch the interactions between the police, the fire, the Hamilton County Comm Center, and then our public services guys. And just, it's masterful, and we were able to do it on a shoestring, which is what we do. We provide high quality service at the very lowest cost. So thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Good. And the next administrative report will be delivered by Mr. Weckbach.
Yeah, and to continue with the kudos on the fireworks, I do want to quickly thank everybody that attended too. I know we had a large group of residents that showed out and showed how great Colerain can be. After that, we also had our fun event the next morning for the 5K, which was put on by the Pray Hope Believe Foundation, and they had a large contingent as well. I believe 1,200 or so folks signed up to run in that race. And none of this would be possible without all the staff and the volunteers that really poured their time and effort into the fireworks. And I mean, it went off without a hitch, and I think everybody did a great job. So just wanted to share that with you all.
Can I interject? There was a hitch. A week before, the fireworks were on a barge somewhere on a supply chain, and I want to let everybody know that your tax dollars are at work because Jeff, and Tawana got that beautiful display of fireworks. And even at 4:30 that day, they brought us the waterfall in individual pieces, and they were still stringing them. So there's a lot of behind-the-scene works that you guys, kudos to all of you guys that made it spectacular.
Absolutely. So I did want to quickly remind folks that are watching that we do now have the residential composting available to residents of Colerain. Buckets, if you wanted to participate, are available for free at our front desk here at 4200. So if you stop by during business hours, we'll get you signed up. You can take your bucket, and then you can start diverting more waste from the landfill by using our residential composting. If you don't want to use one of our buckets, you're able to use your own and drop the composted waste behind the community center, where we have several large-scale carts that are going to be serviced by Go Zero, who I believe takes it to the Dayton area, so it's out of Colerain and hopefully gets put back to better productive use.
This is food waste.
Food waste,
And then
yes.
and the drop-off hours are?
You can drop it off whenever you would like.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, and then when it comes to the statistics, we are getting back on track when it comes to our park visitors. We're about where we want to be. We do see a decline in Colerain Park right now, but our hope is that that starts to turn around as well. The other two parks are right there, consistent with prior years. When it comes to our roads reporting, you can see there where we've been year to date. That graphic that is in the administrative report actually shows you a map. So if you wanted to see which streets are getting a lot of love with potholes or storm basins or trees or whatever that might be, you'd be able to dig in and see that a little more clearly and quickly on the map. And finally, when it comes to our litter laborers, they're out there crushing it. This is actually the highest record of number of bags that they've collected in any given month, just as the litter laborers. So when you look at the this chart here, the past months do include volunteer efforts and what have you, but just on the litter laborers alone, they hit their new high, which is great. So I think we're moving in stride. And I'll gladly take any questions that you all have.
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitebach. And presenting for the Department of Development.
Is your mic on?
Ah, yes, it is. Presenting for the Department of Development, we have Mr. David Miller.
Mr. Miller?
Good evening once again. I want to begin just by giving kudos and thanks to the hard work of staff in the Development Department, Jared Allig, our zoning administrator, Stephen Springsteen, our development officer, and then assistance often comes from our front desk manager, Debbie Potzner, and Glenda Carter, right? Drew a blank there. Amazing work that they do constantly. I wanted to just note that for the month of June, we hit a high water mark for the year of 86 zoning certificates. So it's someone coming in for any number of items, and it's work that it encompasses the Board of Zoning Appeals, new businesses, and I'll note that Sportstown Bar and Grill in the old Golden Corral is ready to open. Mike Evans, we've met with him a couple of times. It's exciting, really, what he's putting together there. I think he's going to have a really strong hometown feeling, and he feels like he's got the relationships with local celebrity athletes and going to be able to bring them in on a regular basis, so we're excited about that. Rally House, it's a sports clothier, and Home Buys is a kind of similar to Big Lots. Those also are new businesses that are going to be opening, but June 86, we had 55 in May, 62 in April, and it just goes down from there. So excited about that. One other note from development is that we filed a couple of grant applications for sidewalks in June for approximately $1.25 million through OKI and SORTA. And so we expect to be successful with both of those. That's going to be Pool Road from Colerain to Cheviot, and then along Colerain from John Rose to Shady Crest. So those are the two sidewalk segments that we're targeting. And we've also restarted some conversations to get construction moving on Joseph Road sidewalks there as well. So that's my report.
That's interesting. That last one is interesting. We'll have to talk
Yes,
about
it
that.
is.
Thank you.
All right.
Quick question for you that you may not know, but maybe you could come back. So when I was reading through the greater growth spec, I always forget about the CRA districts. Is that right, CRA? Yep. In that it also applies to residential housing. I don't know if we could put some kind of information. I bet you there's a lot of homeowners that would be interested in pursuing that. I mean, basically what happens is that you get half off your taxes for a number of years until you've paid back your investment, I guess, or half of it.
There's a formula that they use, but the CRA district in Groesbeck is primarily commercial. There is a CRA district in Northbrook, but I believe that now would be a very good time to reevaluate those geographic boundaries to include more of Northbrook and more of Groesbeck so that they have access to that program.
So is it permitted, you know how we did with the CBDG money, how with the sidewalks, and we kind of lent it up front and got it paid back. Is it permitted to do a program similar to that with CRA money for people that are going to make improvements to both commercial and residential properties?
The way the CRA works is it abates up. So if your house is worth $150,000 and you do a $50,000 addition, the incremental increase, that $50,000 addition, the taxes on that $50,000 is abated 50%.
Okay.
So it's actually turns out to be on a residential scale a fairly small number.
Okay.
Up to 50% for up to 10 years. But every little bit helps, you know.
Yeah.
And it's an incentive for folks to invest in those areas.
Commercial, it seems like it's a little bit higher.
It's the same percentages, but we're talking about higher dollar values of increase, and so those numbers change.
Okay, so what do we need to do to reevaluate the boundaries and kind of get the word out there for folks that?
Just what you're doing right now, putting it on our radar, and we can bring it to you and have a conversation about it first so we can first see what's existing, and then you can let us know what ideas you have for proposed. We can bring our ideas too, and then we can.
So I get a sense it's really underutilized. Would that be accurate, or do we even?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And frankly, CRAs are not my favorite economic development tool for commercial, because it actually does reduce the revenue that comes to the township. Sure. We've talked about TIFs ad nauseum here forever and ever, and so we understand that the pie doesn't get smaller, you know, for us. In fact,
right.
it results in more revenue for us. So my preferred economic development tool is always TIF, but CRA sometimes can be a game changer, as it has with the Skating Place, which was one of our CRAs, and Northgate Mall.
Okay. All right. So maybe we can work on. I don't know. It just seems to me when I intuitively know, because I've read about it before, that it's available on residential, but I don't know anyone who's ever taken advantage of it.
And that said, if I'm looking at the plan we were talking about this evening, if you go to page 20, if you go to our agenda and look at the Groesbeck plan, it looks like it starts on page 29 to 31, gives a little bit more of a description of what we're talking about with the CRAs.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
And that concludes our administrative reports. Thank you.
All right. We go to trustee reports.
I can go first because I'm going to throw something out here. If anybody didn't know or watched the 4th of July works for Colerain Township, they were really well done, as said before. But before that day, the 1869 inaugural baseball game was played, and the trustees got to throw out the first pitch, and I do believe it's on film that I threw the strike. Just
Whatever.
Just teasing. But it was really a very nice event, and the Historical Society was there. And one of the things that was also warmed my heart is they were giving out the books. And I saw kids laying in the grass actually reading books. Instead of being on a computer or a tablet, it was just really nice seeing that actually worked, giving children books and sitting there reading them. So that was just, I thought was wonderful with you guys being there also. And once again, I love seeing the green bags piled up on 275. Thanks again for the Colerain Township volunteers that just keep us clean. And thank you for the people that don't litter. And also on that note, when we go around looking at some of these neighborhoods that we're putting abatements on, it strikes me as I should give a compliment where compliments are due. Some people go out of their ways to make their yards look beautiful, yard art. I mean, this past couple weeks, the flowers that were on bloom. Thank you to all the people in Colerain Township that take pride in their homes. It is show, and I just wanted to compliment the people that do take pride and have the respect for Colerain Township. Thank you.
Sure. The 1869 baseball game that Kathy is talking about, I guess it's the Reds Hall of Fame sponsors a team that dresses up like the Cincinnati Redlegs would have dressed up in 1869, wearing white woolen outfits, playing baseball without gloves. And the game was up at Colerain Park, what is known as Fogelsong Field, and I think UDF supplied ice cream, and Chamber of Commerce supplied root beer, and it was a fun event, and it gave me a chance to learn about the origins of baseball, because the person from the Reds Hall of Fame that described it did a very good job describing it. My report is short. The funeral for Stephen Hayden, for those who don't know, Stephen was a 33-year-old young man who was a part-time firefighter for us and full-time with another department, and in the very prime of his life, and he did not wake up June 24th. And you never know what God has in the plans for you, but may he rest in peace. I thought both fire departments and everybody involved did an awesome job with his funeral services. I was able to stop down at Spring Grove Funeral Home that day, and it's really something to see. The firefighters and our emergency services really know how to honor somebody with a funeral service. At my home, there's somebody that's gone around the neighborhood and put these little pink slips on the mailbox, and I remembered this happened 2 years ago, and it's a company that likes to go around and paint numbers on our township curbs on the street. This is not anything the township advocates or sponsors. This is just it doesn't even have the name of the business on it, but they were in my neighborhood yesterday, and I grabbed this off the mailbox, and if these people come to your house, this is nothing you're obligated to do, and I don't know what type of paint they're using or how long it stays there, or if it washes off 3 rainfalls from now or when the snowplow goes past it. I don't advocate for that, but just watch out if you see these show up on your street. So we do have a lot of folks that call our police department, excuse me, and as Assistant Chief Cordy mentioned, we had 3,922 calls last month. We try to get to everything as soon as possible. That is quite a call volume, 3,900 calls in 30 days. I think we're doing a great job of getting out and providing service. If it's a non-emergency and it takes us a little bit longer to get there, that's why. Our guys are not sitting around, our men and women are not sitting around. I do occasionally stop back, and there's nobody back there because everybody's out on calls, and they have 2 or 3 calls to go to after they get off the call that they're on. Our people stay very busy, and they do a great job. So if it's a non-emergency, we are coming. Sometimes it just takes a few extra minutes, and I think they do great work. Thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you very much. I'd just like to echo the great 4th of July, the fireworks, the vintage baseball game, the 5K run, all fantastic events. I'm hoping that the vintage baseball game will be an annual thing, kind of make us unique. One of the things I had a chance to drive by, and you know, sometimes I can't visualize things, other people's visions real well, but I told Lori McMullen, I'm like, thank God I put trust in you and your vision on this mural, because mural was something I really didn't get all that excited about, but when I saw it, I was blown over on how great it was. It was really well done, and I told her that, and I'm like, you hit a home run with that.
Mention where that's located.
At the corner of Pippin and Adams Road by the Dollar General there, is that Dollar General? Yeah. There's so many Family Dollar, Dollar General, Dollar Tree. For Mr. Mills, we've talked about this. You and I individually, and we've talked about it in a couple of trustee meetings, the gas aggregation. It's kind of been my position that gas is probably going to go down. I did get some information, and I was able to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive and research. There are those that suggest that it might be going up. So I don't know where we're headed, especially for winter. I know that we're trying to get the right price on it. I feel like it's it's difficult, you know, Warren Buffett says, don't try to guess the market, which is essentially what we're trying to do. So is there an update on where we're at with that?
No update as of right now. We have a company that advises us on this because it's what they know best. And so we are waiting for their advice. We're not alone. There's a number of communities adjacent to us, Green Township, Springfield Township, that are in the same situation. So we are in a holding pattern until the crystal ball gets a little bit clearer.
And right now, your gas and electric bill is just the market price, whatever gas
Not
is?
electric. Electric is
I
still
mean,
an aggregation.
the gas side of
The
it.
gas side of
Right.
it is, yep.
But there's some real concerns with gas in the winter, I think.
Yeah.
What is it up to right now? I know we're trying to stay at 56, 57.
Well, it's fluctuating with the market right now. So it's the price. It's called the Duke price to compare. So it's the Duke market price for gas is what Colerain Township residents are paying right now. We did not lock in
Right.
at 1, 2, or 3 years because we just didn't know
Right.
what the market was doing. So.
Right. And I've also spoken to you, and I think you've kind of moved a little bit forward on this. This is an uncomfortable topic, but I think, you know, we've got some experts here in the community with police, fire, and EMS. And when I saw July 4th and what happened in Illinois and what could have happened in Madison and what evidently could have happened in Richmond, we're going to try to put something together for citizens, training for active shooter training, because in this, and again, it's not a comfortable situation, but minutes matter. I mean, I think the last time we had training at my school, we were told that most of the casualties are within 7 minutes, and they taught us how to put tourniquets and things like that. So I think that would be something good for the community. Hopefully, it'll be knowledge you'll never have to use, but who knows anymore. I met on July 11th with at Panera with Congressman Warren Davidson. For a lot of you that don't know, Warren Davidson now this is his territory as of with the redrawing as of January 1st, and he's excited to work with Colerain Township. It's really weird the way his district has now been drawn because he's never had anything in Hamilton County. Now he's got the whole west side, and that's kind of new. Solid waste. We're interviewing on Thursday, July 14th. We're interviewing for a board position representative from just general citizens. And on Wednesday, July 20th is the next board meeting. And I know that I appreciate the work, and we're getting ready to come out with a product for both rental registration, and there's some effort being done at the state level. I thank the police for the impact unit to get 15 arrests, get a firearm, some meth, and fentanyl off the street is just incredible, and that was well done. And on July 8th, Mr. Mills set up and was with me when I did it, so if I get something wrong, you can fill it in here. We had a conference call with Pro Champs, and for the rest of my report, I'd just like to go over what the process is for vacant and foreclosed property registration because, you know, like anything else in government, you know, we have to protect everyone's rights, and it's not like, you know, my neighbor's lawn is, you know, 6 feet tall. It's not like we can go seize his house. Now, there's a process in order to protect people's rights. With Pro Champs, so the rest of the report, I want to go over this process. Our work began in April because there was a slight delay because the computers, for lack of a better computer term, couldn't talk to each other. What we have is two different classes. We have foreclosed and we have vacant. Typically, we try to use foreclosed over vacant because on the foreclosure end, you're working with banks, REITs, real estate investment trusts, and people like that, companies like that are going through the process. You know who to call, you know where to call, and in fact, sometimes they might even call you first. And there's, within these two categories, there's 4 statuses: remitted, reconciled, applied, and active. The way this happens is that the township will get a notice of a vacant or foreclosed. It might be a service request, it might be other information, and that would then create an inspection order, and the township then inspects. If it's determined, yes, that's vacant or foreclosed, the data is given to Pro Champs, and Pro Champs has to, if it's foreclosure, deals with the lien holder. It's a little bit easier, the time is a little bit less, it's a little bit it takes a little bit less time. If it's vacant, now pro champs has to go determine the property owner. And that's not as simple as just looking in the phone book and sometimes finding a property owner. It's very difficult to get in touch with them. Once that's done, they send a first notice, and then the respondent gets 30 days. And then they send a second notice, and the respondent gets 30 days. If there's no response to this, and the 30 days, they've gotten 2 notices, nobody's responded, it now comes back to us. And we take it over to Mr. Solomon, and he refers them to housing court. Housing courts, like all the courts, are backed up. And from what I understand, the majority defendants don't even show up to housing court. So now if they haven't shown up, we're probably, 4 or 5 months down the line, then a capias is issued, which means they can be arrested, but you need a police contact for that. So when we talk about how many are in vacant and foreclosed status, currently foreclosure status, foreclosure registration, we have 47 that are active, which means we're researching them. We have 43 that have been remitted, which means they've applied, they've paid the fee, and we're waiting to get the fee back from pro champs. 26 have been reconciled, which means that they are going through the process, and 5 that are applied. So we've been able to raise $17,200 in revenue from the foreclosure. And if you look at the past years, so this year we're at we've hit 79. Last year we had 7. The year before 28. The year before 53. The year before 64. This is the highest number since 2017. At the vacant status, we have only one that's been remitted. But again, it's a longer time period. We have 75 that are active, and 79 that are active, which means those 79 have gotten their second letter this week, which puts them now in a 30-day time period. So assuming you get your second letter today, or it's sent out today, 30 days from then it comes back to us, and then it goes to Mr. Solomon. And obviously, it's the volume of trying to do 79 housing reports in one sitting is going to be very difficult to do. So that's why this takes so long, and that's why it seems like, well, gee, nothing ever gets done with it. Well, yeah, we can't just seize somebody's house. We have to go through a process, and the 30 days have been designed to not draw litigation. It's stuff that's been proven in court, and that's why we've hired pro champs to do this. If you think about all these processes too, you've got people that need to register, people that need to run down who the owners are, people that need to contact. I feel it's a win to have this outsourced at just 20% because it's very difficult to get the people in place to do that. So I just thought it would be helpful to go over the process and talk about what goes on with that. Did I capture it correctly? Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly right, and I just want to underscore that it has never been this successful before. I mean, it's July, so we still have the entire second half of the year to be going through this. For the first year of, man, that hasn't happened in like 3 months. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But anyway, it's never been this successful before, and I think that it's moving well. To your point, the vacants, Pro Champs gave us 300 potentially vacant properties, which our code enforcement officers went out to confirm whether they were vacant or not. They identified, 85 or something that actually were vacant. Now those are going through the process for vacants. But as you can imagine, if the home is vacant, the owner is not there because it's vacant. And so where is the owner? Who knows? And so that's the hard part, is the whodunit game. That's why these things take a while.
All right. Well, thank you. And that is my rather lengthy report. I apologize for that.
You have to type that up. Just saying.
Yeah, new business. I'm sorry.
Very good. First item of new business is in our Public Safety Department and will be presented by Assistant Chief Ed Cordy.
Evening.
Good evening again.
All right, Police Department tonight only has 2 resolutions. So the first one here is a resolution declaring a junk motor vehicle. Recommend adoption of a motion to declare and order abatement of a junk motor vehicle at the following property: 3494 Pool Road, 51. It's a silver Nissan Altima, 2005, Ohio plate 789 X-ray Edward Queen.
All right, any motions at this time?
I motion that we approve the resolution declaring that the vehicle located at 3494 Pool Road
I'll
be
second.
declared a junk motor vehicle.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All right, discussion?
We are about 14 months into getting rid of junk vehicles. We have gotten rid of a lot of them and made Colerain Township a much better place.
We're not slowing down either.
All right, we'll call the question, sir.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. Thank you.
All right, the next one I have before you tonight is a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement. Recommend adoption of the resolution that allows for the removal of uncontrolled vegetation and/or refuge at the following properties: 9711 Dunraven, 2715 Galbraith, West Galbraith, 2591 Grant, that's 4 different parcels, 3616 Hanley, 10336 Moonflower, 9076 Neal, 8349 Pippin, 3263 Rinda, 2416 Shone, 2668 Springdale, and 2548 Willow Spring.
Any motions?
I motion that we approve the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at the properties detailed by Assistant Chief Cordy.
I second.
Discussion?
None.
All right, we'll call the question, sir.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. We declare nuisance and order abatement at those properties. Thank you, Chief.
Next item of new business is in public services and will be presented by Mr. Eckler.
Thank you, Board. This item is a motion authorizing the Township Administrator to execute an agreement and related documents with the American Public Works Association for accreditation. So this has kind of been a long journey for us that we started about 4 years ago, where we started digging in on what it would take to be a fully accredited department. Through that, we've identified a number of items where we could improve and have improved, and now we feel like we are ready to move forward with the accreditation process and actually become an accredited agency. Right now, that assessment is tentatively scheduled for November 2022, so should that assessment occur then, we would probably know either by year end or early in 2023 whether or not we are accredited. The contract as it stands is for $12,050, and I would recommend adoption of the motion.
All right, any motions?
I motion that I'm just bringing this up on my screen here. I motion that we approve the contract as described by Mr. Weckbach.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Can you tell the public why the accreditation is important for?
Yeah, so what it does is it puts us through a rigorous process where they come in and they look at all of our internal policies, practices, and procedures to evaluate them against the national standards to make sure that we are operating as efficiently and effectively as possible. So early on when we started this, we recognized that we had a lot of information and a lot of things that we did, but we did not document anywhere. And so because of this, we now have this huge document that we've put together that lists out, complex things from, how to make sure that we are in a catch basin, cleaning it and servicing it appropriately, to some simpler things such as, how do we mow the grass in the parks. So now we have all these documents and we want to put it through the test to make sure that we are as up to date and compliant as we can be. And this group hopefully will look at what we do and say that we are a gold standard agency across the board.
And it very much could help us improve some of the areas where there's opportunity for improvement, because this would have an outside group look at our operation, and there are areas for improvement, and to have an outside professional organization look at it might help us and help us to be more effective. And we do spend a lot of money on maintaining our streets and roads and infrastructure and storm basins, and I think it would be a good idea to get that type of input.
All right, I agree. Any other discussion? We'll call the question.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0, so we will be trying for accreditation in public works.
Thank you, Mr. Weckbach. The next item is a motion. It's a development item and will be presented by Mr. Miller.
Good evening again. This is a motion that would adopt the Grow Spec Strategic Improvement Plan. And so I have previously had the opportunity to work with Kathleen Norris, and so excited about the possibility of taking some of these ideas that are in this plan and implementing those. But this is the adoption of the plan as presented by C.I.C. Terry earlier tonight.
And we've had a lot of discussion about that plan this evening, and to be clear, it doesn't mean we're adopting any of it, none of it, or some of it, but it gives us a framework for what we would like to do, as opposed to what has gone on over the last 50 to 75 years, which is not bad, but this would get us all headed in the same direction, and hopefully as time goes by, we'll be able to pick off some of those items. So I would motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Unger. I think this is, and you know, it sometimes gives you some out-of-the-box thinking, and you need fresh eyes on things, and that's what this is all about. And putting together this plan and taking what our constituents want and activating it into some type of action plan, I think is important.
Definitely.
All right, Mr. Weckbach?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. We adopt the Grow Spec Strategic Reinvestment Plan.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for your hard work. Nicely done.
All right. This evening we have 3 items of new business in administration. The first one is a finance item and will be presented by Mr. McElravy.
Welcome back.
Thank you. The resolution that is on the agenda is to authorize the adoption of amended appropriations in the fire fund. This is to increase appropriations by $3 million to take the total appropriation for the year for the fund to $17,246,000. $17,246,806.36. This would increase appropriations, as I said, by $3 million to allow for the early expenses associated with the construction of 2 new firehouses. This is the first step of many in a process that will come before you through each step of the way as we prepare recommendations for your consideration regarding who and how and when and how much. But the staff recommendation at this point is for adoption of the resolution.
I motion that we adopt the resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2022.
I'll second that.
And this is as you described, it is the first step on paying for these 2 new firehouses and paying for it with cash on hand.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll have a vote.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. We move the funds to help start paying for the firehouses.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McElravy. The next item on the agenda is a motion authorizing the Township Administrator to execute all necessary agreements with Right Stuff Software for timekeeping software. I was able to find the exact costs. It's listed in the agenda packet on page 106. So the township-wide, the installation or initial setup fees is $25,500. Licensing and support is $2,125. There are optional fees here that you can see. As always, it's always listed in our agenda packet. So we had a bit of a discussion about this earlier. The goal here is to get the entire organization on one timekeeping software to improve accountability and to reduce the unbelievable chore of that is payroll servicing right now. It's very inefficient. So recommendation is to adopt the motion.
I'll move to adopt the motion authorizing Township Administrator to execute all necessary agreements with Right Stuff Software for timekeeping software.
I'll second.
Yes. Jeff, thank you for coming forward with those amounts. I saw them in there also, but it would have took me a while to find that. It was on page 106. All that is always in our agenda, and the audience member who had requested that during the citizens address is not in the room right now, but we'll have to let that person know if they go back to watch the replay that came on at 8:51 in the evening, that you did have those amounts available.
All right.
No other comments from me.
Ms. Orich? No? Okay. We'll have a vote.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. Mr. Mills will execute all necessary agreements with Right Stuff Software.
Outstanding. And the final item of new business is another finance option, or another finance item, and that would be presented by Mr. McElravy.
Isn't there a song, The Mac is Back? I think there is. It's from the 90s, right?
Got a little bit on the agenda this evening. So, as we discussed earlier, this is the action part of the agenda on the 2023 tentative tax budget. Staff recommendation is for a motion to approve the 2023 tentative tax budget.
I motion that we approve the 2023 tentative tax budget.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion?
This is just a function of making sure we're doing things on time and getting it to the auditor on time.
That's correct.
And I'd like to thank you. You are outstanding at putting these in the what you do with the budget. I don't know. I've never come across somebody so thorough, and this is another example. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing.
Well, thank you. There's many hands involved. It's far more than
Well, Mills said he does most of the work and lets you put your name on it.
Well, you don't know whatever Jeff he's alluding to.
And I would like to point out, looking through this, which anyone can find in our agenda, the bond retirement for Public Works is at 0. The bond retirement for Streetscape shows a 0. The bond retirement for Fire shows a 0. But the bond retirement for Parks shows 2 cents. Why is that?
That is the, let's see here, the fund balance from the prior year.
It just shows on line 20, I don't expect you to know that, but I noticed there's a line item in there for 2 cents on item 3102.
3102, thank you. Yes, that's the fund balance from the prior year.
Put your 2 cents in, there you go. It's important to keep track of all of it, but I did notice that. So everything else is good. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Weckback?
Yes. Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. So now we have a 2023 tentative tax budget. I see nothing in old business, so we'll go to consent items.
Sir, I think the song you're referring to is Return of the Mac by Mark Morrison.
There you go.
Oh, did you just Google that?
No, I used to be a DJ, so I remember,
Oh,
I remember
okay.
Return of the Mac. I played that song a lot.
Very popular in the 90s. Yeah.
We have 4 items on the consent agenda. First item is a contract with Spring Grove Cemetery. It's for indigent burials. The cost of the contract is $795. The next item on the consent agenda is a promotion to full-time firefighter EMT in the Department of Fire and EMS. The position was posted. We received applications, conducted interviews. We extended a conditional offer of employment to Tyler Leppert. The wage for this job is $18.20 per hour, $50,149 annually for 53 hours per week, contingent upon board approval. He would be eligible to begin work on July 24th, 2022. Next item is a contract with Pitney Bowes. It's for the use of a postage machine. The contract provides equipment which places postage on mailed correspondence at a cost of $51.14 per month. The term of the contract is 60 months. The next item is a new hire in the Department of Fire and EMS. It's a fleet mechanic co-op position. This position was posted, received applications, conducted interviews, and extended a conditional offer of employment to Cameron Kohler. The wage for this job is $12.36 per hour for no more than 30 hours per week, contingent upon board approval. Mr. Kohler will be eligible to begin work on July 25th, 2022. The recommendation is to approve all consent items.
A motion that we approve the consent agenda as described by Mr. Mills.
I second.
All right, any discussion?
None from me.
None.
Done?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, the consent items pass 3-0.
Accomplished a lot.
Fiscal office report.
No report.
There you go.
Yes.
Executive session?
No, sir.
All right. Any motions?
I would motion that we adjourn the meeting at 8:57 in the evening, which is good for you, Matt. You got us out of here maybe before 9 o'clock.
Woohoo.
There
You
you
can
go.
go out now.
All right, I'll second it.
And I do have a discussion item real quick. I just want to, I don't get to talk to you guys outside of meetings. Together, the three of us are going to move forward and get these firehouses done. I realize we're going to butt heads a little bit, but we will get them done and we will get them paid for, and we're making great headway in that direction. So I appreciate the fact that we're three different people working together to get this done. And I do, we
Absolutely.
will get it done.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, so I seconded, so let's have a vote.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, we're adjourned at 8:58.
Woohoo.
All right, Mike.